The day I landed from my honeymoon, we were in Italy for 17 days, got a nice break for the first time, taking such a long vacation, had jet lag. So I'm watching TV at 4:35 in the morning, something like that. And they said on the news, pink slips will be going around Lazard's municipal finance department today. And I was like, welcome to marriage. I just got let go. Of 40 people, 38 were let go, the head of the department and myself were the last two people standing. AI is going to impact many industries at one time. Blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs, it's in medicine, software, extremely powerful.
Can I ask about the future of data centers? Because I saw Elon Musk says that they can go in space.
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on that?
There are reasons to think that it is possible. And I will say that I've been speaking to students for 39 years. Basically, since I got out of school, I've been talking to students. I've spoken probably to 1,000 students plus over the years. Illustrate to them that you are valuable.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jewish Professionals Podcast, the JP Podcast. I'm Hillel Bainach.
And I'm Benjamin Winters, and we're students at Yeshiva University, just looking for some advice.
Our aim is to bring to you Jewish professionals from every industry to learn from their successes and failures, how they grew in their career and Jewish identity, and made a Kiddush Hashem along the way.
We hope you can apply what you learned through the lessons to your own life as they pass the torch to us, the next generation. We can't wait to go along this journey with you. This is the Jewish Professionals Podcast.
Woo!
There we go.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the studio on this beautiful spring afternoon in New York City, Ben. And we have an exciting guest today in the studio.
Well, I actually was introduced to his son first, Kidron, who is also an exciting person. We met on a ski trip, and I thought I was the expert skier, but he, I guess, showed me up. It's not the first time that's happened. But our guest today is Lawrence Askowitz, managing partner at Gabriel Advisors, a leading advisory firm in digital infrastructure and telecom, where he's been at the helm for over 20 years.
I guess we'll go with that. The firm actually relaunched in November.
In November, wow, okay,
Yeah,
excited
so
to hear
it's
about
only
that.
6 months old.
6 months, okay, 6 months, 20 years, I guess, what's the difference? He's had a distinguished career on Wall Street at firms like Lazard, Credit Suisse, and Deutsche Bank. And he is a proud graduate of Yeshiva University. Lawrence, thanks so much for joining us today in the studio.
Yes, and congratulations to you guys. I heard you've up to 20 or so of these podcasts. That's really great.
Yeah, how many? I think this might be number 25.
Wow. Whew.
Yeah, listen, the audience is growing, the episode count is growing, and the stature of our guests are growing.
I was going to say, you're probably down. I thought you were at number 100 to get to me.
Listen. People like to give back to University, and we are just the beneficiaries of that. But before you were giving back to Yeshiva University, like we mentioned, you were a student here once.
I was a student once.
What was that like growing up and ultimately coming to Yeshiva University?
Okay. So everyone's journey is their own journey, as is mine. I came to YU as a 3-2 student. I don't know how many people still pursue the YU Columbia Engineering degree. I left Ramaz early. I left after the junior year, and I was considering either doing the NYU Cooper Union program for 5 years, leave high school early and still graduate at the same time with 2 college degrees, or YU Columbia Engineering. As you know, when you're 16, starting college, YU is a more comfortable place to go ahead and do it. So my parents very much pushed me to go ahead and come to YU. It was a very good decision to do the YU Columbia Engineering. And I came to be an architect. Actually, my first year at here, I took all the engineering courses to be an architect. And as it turned out, I spoke to a bunch of architects about what it's actually like to be an architect, and it was not the vision that I imagined. I thought I'm just sitting there drafting buildings all day.
Right.
It's mostly interior decorating and drafting,
Really?
AC units, and I just said, I'm not going to enjoy that. So
Why architecture?
I just had I'm creative by nature, and that was my initial pull. My dad is actually now retired finally at 88. He finally retired, but he was a stockbroker for years, one of the first people in the options industry. So I grew up with finance, and there were good days and bad days in finance in the 70s. And I watched my dad growing up, and I learned a lot about finance, but I also decided I did not want to do that. But lo and behold, I have almost 40
Finance
years in
found you.
finance at the end of the day. But somewhere along the way, at Columbia, actually, just started to pursue degrees in advanced math. In 1987, when I was coming out of school, it was actually before the crash, which happened in October. You were able to get a lot of jobs. So every season's a little bit different, as I'm sure you've heard from many guests. 1987 was a good year. I had opportunities in management consulting, which was the hot area at the time. Actuary, advanced math degree, so that was opportunities. And I found an opportunity at Lazard. I found it in the Columbia job books. They didn't really have computers. They had a binder yay thick, and he just did page-by-page flipping. And I just said, Lazard, municipal finance, work with airports and transportation systems. It's sort of like architecture. I'll do the financing end of building projects. And that's where I started. I started at Lazard in 1987, figured I would just do it for 2 years, and then come back. My professors wanted me to go work for International Paper, do something IE, industrial engineering, operations research related, but I stayed in finance. I got promoted right away, and I got promoted again, and next thing I know, I was stuck in finance for a long time.
That's such an interesting lesson, by the way, is so many times in life you'll look at the external of something, like architecture, for example, and be like, this looks so awesome. Like, I'm going to be building airports. And you go into the nitty gritty, and it's like, I'm really just designing air conditioning vents the whole time. It's such a life lesson, I feel like.
And you know what? The truth was, in how I started in munis, I wasn't really getting it all that much either. My first day at Lazard, I was 1987, so IBM PCXT. Doesn't mean anything to you, but maybe some of the older people. There were no computers at the firm. My first day, I was walked from floor to floor, introduced Lazard. We just hired our first geek. And I was like, please don't introduce me that way. Over time, it became a little bit more acceptable, but 1987 was not very acceptable. There were no computers in anybody's desk. I did all the programming. The firm won a Mack truck receivables deal. I said, how does that work? Okay, prepayments, defaults, and I would just go ahead and program. But it was early days. At night, we actually, me and another guy, we installed the first computer system at Lazard in our department.
You're the jack of many trades over here.
It was nobody had computers back in 1987. All the bankers had a phone.
Yeah.
A phone and a desk. There were no computers back then.
That's amazing. My grandfather, he worked for Citi, so we always used to ask him what he did, and he said computers. So we said, what does that mean? That's exactly what he said. He goes, I fix problems. We're like, what does that mean? He goes, problem solver. not much detail, but I guess at that time when the computers were just being introduced, people who could, I guess, navigate those were very, very vital.
They had no way of, and keep in mind also that the original spreadsheets were really rudimentary. You have all sorts of sophisticated functions right now, but back then you had to program everything. So people who just could not do anything, and but there was a dichotomy, really, right? So I had opportunities to go work at Drexel Burnham in portfolio management. I happened to have picked this Muni area. And I remember one day when I was walking out, I grabbed a couple of the bond prospectuses. And people, the MDs, managing directors, were looking at me saying, why are you taking those documents? And I said, because I want to read them. I said, but you're only responsible for these 5 tables in the document. I said, yeah, but I don't only want to be, filling in tables. I want to know what it is that I'm doing. And it changed the perception at the firm slowly because, again, it was the bankers, no computers, and then the people just do the numbers and stuff like that and structuring. So that kind of engagement was helpful. Ultimately, I decided that the younger people who are going to come out were going to be much better at math and computers than I would be. And you actually had to fight your way from behind the computer to do more banking, structuring, and client management kind of opportunities. But it was a very conscious decision on my part to go ahead and have that transition happen. Probably doesn't exist today, but that was very much a dynamic then.
I think you're touching on something really interesting for young professionals, which is you're coming into a role where you're kind of pigeonholed into something, Right.
That's right.
And people it's very easy to be complacent and stay within that thing. How important is it to get outside of that, be curious, and start learning as much as you can about other things that might not necessarily be core to your day-to-day function?
So there are lots of ways to take that. It's a great question. And there are lots of things that people taught me through the years about navigating that. I will take a step back and say that be who you are. If you're an intellectually curious person, great. If you're not, there are lots of ways of having great careers. You don't necessarily have to reinvent yourself into something that you're not. If you're true and natural and you're playing to your power, alley, that would be my suggestion. I am intellectually curious, so I always play around with different things. So that worked for me. I'm going to give you two little stories that people told me from my junior years. You just were making me think about some stories from back when I was in my 20s. There used to be a store called Mom's Bagels, which burned down many years ago. And I used to grab a bite there, and a friend's father, Mitchell Presser's father, passed away, but we would sometimes grab lunch over there. And one of the first times that I saw him, we grabbed lunch, he said, "So Lawrence, what do you do?" And I told him, I do the computers, I do the math stuff, I do the numbers. And he said, "So, like, who's your client? Who's your boss?" So I just basically said, "I don't really have them, I do the numbers." And he said, "Everybody has a boss." He said, "Your boss is internal. Your function is mostly internally facing, so the people that you're trying to make happy are your immediate VP or managing directors." He said, "Other people are more externally focused." So I would say in terms of thinking about your career, especially as a young person, think about your direct reports. Think about your lines. Everybody is working for somebody. You're not just doing your job function. That job function exists in a broader scheme, and it's very important to know who you're working for.
Right, so even someone who's coming out of college doing a startup or something like that might not seem like they have like someone physically in front of them who they're reporting to, but maybe the early investors, their friends and family who are putting in money behind the idea. Like those are the people who you not necessarily like have to report to, but who you want to make proud and who you're trying to impress and continue to hit new goals and new benchmarks.
It could be your investors. It could be your clients, your customers who you're trying to get. Josh, my son Josh, not Gidon, went here, and he very much wanted to have a startup coming out of school. And I cautioned him and I guided him away from it. He's at a startup now. But the reality is that most startups fail, and no fault, that good idea, people not working hard, they could be great ideas. But coming out of school, at least the advice I gave Joshua, so I would give to other people as well, is to have something solid on your resume for your first job and then go ahead and do it. So he went to work for AWS, Amazon Web Services. He was doing AI strategies for companies. Did that for 4 years. Went in a great position to always have on his resume artificial intelligence, knows the cloud. And now
AWS, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great foundation for whatever it is that he wants to do. So yes, you do have a boss now he's got a boss, even though it's got a early stage company. But when we're talking about people coming out of school, which may be some of the listeners,
right.
I have caution. You said I was going to go ahead and be brutally honest with some of my advice. My 2 cents is that definitely pursue your dreams, and if you want to do it, but I think coming out of school, you should have something that will stand the test of time and not be XYZ company that no one ever would have heard of in 3 years.
Yeah. All right, quick pause. I've got to put you on to one of my favorite new spots in the city, Sushi Tokyo of the Upper West Side. They just opened their doors, and let me tell you, their sushi is incredible. But they've also got ramen, burgers, tacos, so many options, not just sushi. It's a great spot for young professionals, whether you're going out with friends, grabbing something quick to eat, and they're even open late. Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, open till midnight. Also, they will cater to you anywhere in the city. Office events, parties, even bar mitzvah. All part of under OK supervision. If you're in the area, check them out. 660 Amsterdam. Tell them that the JPP sent you. And you stayed at Lazard for 10 years, right? That's a solid amount of time. And you mentioned how you got promoted quite often, right? Throughout the cycle. So What were the things you were doing to stand out? What were the things you did you felt that really set you apart from your peers?
So you've said you're there 10 years. I think it was actually closer to 11 years, and that's necessarily a positive. I would actually offer that I probably stayed at Lazard too long. I do think it's important to stay the right amount of time at firms. And if you're a serial leaving after 6-9 months, that's not a good resume. It's very hard to hire somebody. 10, 11 years is obviously a long period of time. I got promoted and paid, so I stayed. It always was intellectually interesting. I think I mentioned that in the beginning I didn't quite get what I was doing, but then I started working on one of these transportation projects for, neither of you are from Boston. So there's something called the Big Dig in the 80s.
Big Dig.
The Big Dig. They suppressed the central artery that ran through Boston. If you go to Boston, you'll see a lot of tunnels where you come into downtown now. They built the Third Harbor Tunnel. I did the financing plan for that. It was a massive project. At the time, it was probably going to be a $3 billion project. We built a financing plan that would withstand cost overruns and time overruns. The project, I think, went over $11 billion over time.
It was supposed to be $3 billion, you said.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I was like, yes, I get what I do now. And I got me very excited. I ended up doing the financing plan for the new Denver airport, the new Reagan airport, doubling the size of Dulles.
Wow.
That you may like it or not like it, the air train.
I could speak to both of those.
JFK.
I could speak to both of those. I've been to Denver multiple times. The airport there is gorgeous. I don't know if you also had anything to do with the Pegasus that's standing there, which is
Just
pretty,
the
which is
financing
pretty,
plan.
which is pretty impressive. But Dulles, I think, is the best airport in that I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland. So Dulles, it's all the airports. It's BWI and it's national. They're all around like 30 minutes from my house. Every time it's Dulles. Every time it's Dulles. We find that to be the most.
So what goes behind a financing plan for one of these big investments?
It all depends on what the particular project is. So if think about Denver, brand new airport. Literally had Stapleton, and then they're building something 50 miles away, this brand new airport. There's cost allocation that goes on between the land side and the air side. Land side has basically become malls and all these different things that happen where people are, and the air side are the gates where United and the different airlines pay. And you have to do allocation of costs. So how much does everything cost? How do you capitalize it? What's the right time? What kind of hedging do you put on interest rates to go ahead and build this? It's a multi-year project. So it's, whatever it was, $3-4 billion worth of debt financing and allocating costs for it. I happen to have loved it. I love transportation. For my 55th birthday, my wife and kids took me to JFK Airport. We went to the TWA terminal over there because they know I like transportation. But I did transportation and electric utilities for a long time. But to get back to what I was saying, that maybe I stayed there too long, there were some managing partners, managing directors at the firm who were not doing good things. And one or two of them went to jail. The firm or department took a hit because of that. And I asked my dad and said, maybe it's time for me to get out of here. And he said, anyone asked you to do anything illegal? I said, no. He said, well, if you still enjoy the work, they still treat you well, you should probably just stay. And I probably shouldn't have. Probably when that happened, the leadership of the group should have caught certain things. There's certain things that should have happened. When, again, another true story over here, the day I landed from my honeymoon, we were in Italy for 17 days, got a nice break for the first time, taking such a long vacation. I had jet lag, so I'm watching TV at 4:35 in the morning, something like that, and they said on the news, pink slips will be going around Lazard's municipal finance department today. And I was like, welcome to marriage. I just got let go because our department, once again, got into trouble. Again, I had nothing to do with any of it, but the department got in trouble. And of 40 people, 38 were let go. The head of the department and myself were the last two people standing.
Wow.
And that's a tough way to go ahead and start a marriage. Going down from you got a regular job to it's slimmed down. But we took that as an opportunity to go ahead and start an electric utility M&A practice at Lazard. And then from there, I moved to more of a generalist role. And then I decided to move to telecom. And when I decided to move to telecom, I switched to Credit Suisse at that point. But anyway, that's a little bit of background about, advice. Just staying at a place for 10, 11 years, yeah, there's a lot of comfort to it. But it's important to pay attention to warning signs and don't wait for everything to all of a sudden start spiraling out of control if you're seeing some things that are not good.
Yeah, there's so much there. I want to touch on that point when you see leadership, I guess, fall down. Can you tell us what that experience is like, seeing mentors and people that you look up to and people you're trying to do the work for, just everything's been almost a lie and it feels like the intentions there. Is that the right way of framing it?
I don't want to say a lie. The person who hired me within a year or two was no longer the head of the department, and somebody else became head of the department and was just much more aggressive, shall we say. So far down in the pecking order doesn't really affect me, but it does, because the entire environment, and you see, ultimately we let go everybody. And it took many years for that to happen. But it's just, I think, important to be not just ethical in your own work and what you're doing, but the team that you're working with, I think, is also very important. Probably a year or two after when this person took over, I remember the first early Shabbos. Investment banking, it's not so easy when you're leaving that early Shabbos. I'm at the door at 2:30. I'm at the elevator with my coat on. And this head of the department said, "Where are you going with your coat on, your bag?" And I said, it's November, December, whatever it is. I'm going home for Shabbos. And this is, again, November, December, right before bonuses. And he said, "Well, Lawrence, it's important to know where your priorities are." And he didn't say it in a nice way. And that stuck with me. It was like, I'm going to be paying for leaving on Shabbos because of this guy. And little things along the way, in retrospect, I should have left earlier. But in any event, it all worked out fine, and I went over to Credit Suisse, and I've been in telecom really since then, since '98.
That's such a great story, because advice comes from the unlikeliest of places sometimes. And he didn't realize what he was saying when he said, you should know what your priorities are. For any Jew that hears that, we know what our priorities are. We know what is more important than us, and it's more important than a bonus, and no one who's really committed would ever even question sacrificing a bonus for Shabbat. So I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, but it's not funny when you know you're about to get dinged on your bonus.
That's for sure.
And it's not as though the computers were very slow back then, and some of the programs were very complex. And I did one huge refinancing for, around $900 million, which was a lot of money back then. Refinancing plan for I don't know how many bonds and dormitory authority buildings. And I literally had to do all the programming, go in Saturday night, do all the programming, turn off all the calc functions, and then hit calc, and then take a nap on the couch in the room and let it calculate for 2.5 hours to figure out where the bugs were in the program. And I went in on Saturday night and didn't go home till Tuesday morning.
Wow. That was probably a comfortable couch.
It was a ward couch.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you mentioned you made the move over to both Credit Suisse and then ultimately Deutsche Bank. What is it like moving firms? What advice can you give to people to always be networking, always have that realm of possibilities that you can go to when you want to move on? How did that come about for you? And what kind of experiences did you take from those two banks that you were at?
So always speak to people. Telecom, to go back, I won't spend too much time on it because it may not be relevant or interesting for a lot of the viewers. So there was a Telecom Deregulation Act in 1996. It just used to be AT&T, Ma Bell, and then they broke it apart and created a competitive dynamic. And it just opened up the whole telecom world that you know today. And that happened in 1996. And I mentioned that I started the electric utility M&A practice at Lazard with my colleague. Electric utilities move really slow, very, very slowly. And it was drudge and drudge and drudge. And it was just, we knew the industry very well. Now electric utilities, because of the AI and data centers, power is all the rage. So it's all to the old, but back then, it's very slow moving. And I just thought that it would be fun and fascinating to go ahead and be in an industry that keeps changing. So that's why I pursued telecom. At the same time, I was very actively pursuing a restructuring career. I thought maybe I'll go ahead and I actually had job offers to go work for Enron, if you ever heard of Enron, to do project finance.
You thought the first guys at your place were bad.
So I spoke to somebody at Enron, and she told me it's a house of cards, stay away. I said, okay, thank you very much. And then restructuring, very nice group of people, but decided I didn't want to do that. I just thought that telecom and technology was going to be fun, and that would be a great, fun experience for me to have a career. So I just started speaking to a lot of people who were in that space, internally at Lazard and at different firms, and went to Credit Suisse. This is 1998. So I spent 98 to 2000, really the height of the bubble frenzy, working crazy, crazy hours, but enjoying it very much. There's just always something new to do, which is good for somebody like me. Two things happened that made me want to leave. So here I left after 3 years instead of, like, why you'd spend one place for 11 years and 3. It became very clear in the summer of 2000 that the market was imploding. So the March of 2000 was the peak, and it started to come down, and I did not like what I was seeing. On top of that, Credit Suisse announced that it was buying DLJ. And I was like, we had a new management change that came in at the firm at Credit Suisse, and the new boss wasn't really paying attention, and now we're buying another firm while the market's declining. Like, all the warning signs, time to move on. So I basically got 2 job offers very quickly. One from Bear Stearns, and one from Deutsche Bank. I actually liked the team at Bear Stearns very much, and I was inclined to go to work with the Bear guys. But I just thought Deutsche Bank had just bought Alex Brown, and I was the first person they hired to reboot what they were doing, that they wanted to do both large cap, where Deutsche Bank, we should do large cap companies, and where Alex Brown, we want to do emerging, which I like too. That's more of the technology. So I just liked what they were doing at Deutsche Bank, so I went there and spent 3 years. That's why I just want to modify what you say, because sometimes it sounds like it's just about networking. Just talk to a lot of people. It's not just talking to a lot of people, it's reading the room, reading what's going on in society. And it was that made me want to leave Credit Suisse. Not talking to people, but just market's collapsing, we're buying DLJ, my boss internally is not paying attention to what's going on here. This is not a place that I'm going to enjoy being part of a merger while the market's going down.
Right.
Interesting. I mean, I would say right now, do you think this, I think it was maybe a month ago that everyone was going crazy about the software stock sell-off.
Yeah.
Is that, I guess, familiar territory to that? Maybe not at that scale, but what areas right now do you think people should be a little wary of due to AI infiltration?
Yeah. I don't want to speak outside of where I have more knowledge, right? So I'm not a software person. I saw what was going on in my particular area that it needed. But what I think is also different about AI is that AI is going to impact many industries at one time. So the tech bubble that blew up in 2000, 2001 was a tech bubble blow up. But oil and gas and paper and other things did fine. AI is going to redo many, many industries at one time. So it's blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, it's in medicine, it's in software. It's extremely powerful. I'm sure you've all been playing with it and see what's going on and the amount of money that's being deployed against it. So I can tell you why I started Gabriel Advisors. Part of it was because of AI. But if I'm guiding people today, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving informed enough advice. Judah Diamond over here, in terms of what he's been building the computer science department for many years now, has been remarkable. He's been really upping the game for YU and CS. Been very impressed. And then all of a sudden, we've got this SaaS apocalypse, and a lot of people in CS are no longer getting jobs. Where it was like, how could that be? But with coding and things that are going on, but with AI, it's changing the dynamic. But I don't want to get caught in a macro comment.
Right.
Yeah, but that kind of does. Before we touch on Gabriel Advisors, you touched on your involvement with Yeshiva University and giving back to students and advising students. and I know you have some hot takes or some straight to the point takes, but from what you've seen, what are some things that students just have to be aware of today and they're just not doing a good enough job doing?
There's a lot. I mean, I don't want to pick on today, that somebody thinks that I'm picking on the graduate of this year as opposed to last year or 3 years ago. So this is going to be an amalgam, cup of observations. And I will say that I've been speaking to students for 39 years. Basically, since I got out of school, I've been talking to students. I've spoken probably to 1,000 students plus over the years. So take it, again, not of this moment in time, but more of an amalgam. And let me go to finance in particular, because most people I speak to are interested in finance, a career in finance. In finance, I urge students to take an approach that they are not applying for a job. And I even make it more arresting when I say that. Imagine nobody wants to hire you. They want to arbitrage you. This is only for finance. A job is folding shirts at Old Navy. They have somebody that they need in the stockroom. They need somebody to fill a function. So when you're applying at Lazard or Evercore, wherever it is that you're applying, Citadel, don't think that you're applying for a job. Think that these places will be happy to pay you $100,000 if you'll make them $1 million. They'll pay you $1 million if you'll make them $5 million. They'll pay you $5 million if you make them 10. You just keep on going it out. So if you take that orientation for your job search, that I'm not applying for a job, hi, I'm good at X, and you say that you're good at X, don't do that. Show them. Illustrate to them that you are valuable and you will make them money. So let's use an example. You're applying for an equity research job at UBS. Fill in the blank. I see a lot of students. This is true, by the way, not just YU. This is macro. When you're coming out, love to write. I've been writing for years, and I write for the school paper, and I do all these things. All true. All should be on the resume. Once you are in a room with somebody, I want you to convince them. I want you to show them what you can do. So if your position, for example, is equity research in software, let's go to bring it back. Rather than going ahead and again saying, I like software, I like writing, instead, go ahead and say, I did some research on Salesforce. Come up into it. Come up with a couple of software companies that you did some work on. And I did some modeling, I did some DCFs, I did some LBO analyses, You go ahead and tell them about your analyses on a couple of companies that you've done. You'll blow them out of the water. They're going to go ahead and say, this kid's really smart. You didn't tell them that you're smart. You didn't tell them. You went ahead and demonstrated that you've done the work for something that's relevant. And their takeaway is not that this kid's smart, it's that this kid's going to make us money. So, yeah, even if I didn't have a job, I'll find a spot for him. So, particularly in finance, have the approach that you're not applying for a job, and it will change the language that you use in the interview. It will change how you approach the interview, the prep work that you do for the interview, and how ultimately you'll showcase yourself.
That's so great, because at the end of the day, people just have the wrong frame of what's going on. They feel like a lot of the time in an interview, they don't want to take a risk. They want to be in a box, and they're going to ask them questions, and I'm going to answer the questions. While you're saying, you're going in there as a salesperson. You're going to go sell yourself. I'm going to show you why I am valuable, the same way that a salesperson is going to show you why this is a good water bottle to purchase. And
you haven't even waited for their questions, or you've basically taken one of their questions like a politician and taken it to the answer that you wanted to give. So tell me about what you did today. It's funny that you asked, because let me tell you about Salesforce.com. Whatever it is, you take it because you're not waiting for that question. You already know what you're going to be delivering. Fill in the blank for the particular situation that you're going for. That is something that is huge, I would say. Let me give you one other big macro one. Again, not for today's students from YU, macro over close to 40 years of talking to students. It's actually less true of finance people, but I'm going to include them here too. Most people who you talk to want to help you. You're in a YU ecosystem. The network, and we'll talk about that later, is here to help you. You're in a great, right, I can't say that it's true from every school that's out there, that there's a network that wants to help you. So you're already ahead of the game. Do not abuse it. And what I mean by abuse it is that a lot of people make their problem someone else's problem. So I need a job. Okay, that's your problem. Don't turn your problem into my problem. And I'm more accepting of that approach, only somewhat, if you're talking to someone who's close in age to you, under 30. When you're talking to somebody over 40, particularly 60, don't come to me on, hey, someone said I can talk to you, I need a job. That is no way to approach somebody who's established in the industry. You've made your problem my problem. What you do with the people under 30 is you pick their brains. I am interested in, I used equity research, you fill in the blank of what you want to do. Tell me about what it's like at UBS. What's your role at Centerbridge? Use the more junior people as an opportunity to learn about different job functions, different firms, how they're positioned, and then hear what's going on in the industry. What's going on in distressed debt? Take a lot of notes, and you're going to use that when you're talking to people over 40. You're mining the younger people your age as much as possible. So you might say, I'm looking for a job, but you're also getting intelligence from them. When you're getting to somebody who's over 40, you should be very discreet in your ask. And again, people are happy to help you, but I am interested at a job at Lazard. I understand that you work at Lazard or you worked at Lazard. Do you know this particular person? This is the job that I'm applying for. Can you tell me about it? Can you help me get there? Laser focused. You've done the homework. You know you want to work at Lazard. You know you want to do equity research. You know that there's a job opening that's over there. And you basically limited the ask to this person over 40 to get me in over here, put in a good word, or give me some color. That is a world apart from I need a job. And there's the whole gray zone in between that. Let me, that was a bit of a lecture on a soapbox for softball questions, but I want to share those two macro things that I would like, people who are looking for work to internalize.
Yeah, that was great. And it reminds me of a story. When I was interviewing for investment banking, I interviewed at Guggenheim.
Sure.
And I had this interviewer who was probably not much older than I was. And I thought the interview went great. We connected. But obviously, it was more of an interview type where I was answering the questions. I don't feel like I really sold myself in that particular interview, and I didn't get the job. Fast forward to a few months ago, Mikkel Klein, who's a good mentor of mine, invited me to come play basketball in his private equity tournament. So I'm playing with all these private equity guys. I'm playing, and I see this guy's a little familiar, and he comes up to me. He's like, I remember you. And he didn't look so as cool in his basketball shorts, and his jump shot wasn't as good as his Excel modeling, I'm sure. So he was a little timid to come up to me, and I ended up, he didn't fare well on the basketball court. But that was my interviewer from Guggenheim so many years later, and it gives you a new perspective that these guys are just a few years older than you. There's no reason you should be scared to go to them and just sell yourself and just have a conversation as a person, because they were in your shoes 1.5 years ago.
They have perspective. It's happened in the last 6 months. Somebody coming out of school said, so how did you get your start? I said, how is it remotely relevant what happened 40 years ago to what you're doing? Why are you using your time? I'm not here to talk to you for an hour and a half, right? So I reserve my Friday mornings to talk to students, and not just students, people looking for work. I got 20 minutes for you. Come up with a better question.
You said that back to him.
What?
You said that back.
Yeah, very much. I told him, I said, the good news, bad news, when you speak to me, I am really going to try to help you, but I'm going to be brutally honest. So I give people that heads up. And by the way, Mikkel Klein was one of the people I've spoken to through the years. What I liked about him, not only did he do a tremendous amount of homework, before any conversation that we had early on. He actually said, I want to come up to White Plains. I want to come see you. I said, Mikhail, these, Zooms and these phone calls have been fine. He said, no, I want to spend some time for you. I said, if that's how you're, want to spend your time. But he very much did not want to, I don't remember if it was COVID time. I don't recall how old he is. But I remember he made the point of coming up to White Plains on a Friday afternoon, and we talked in person because he just wanted to go ahead and get that time. So that was someone who was very focused, and follow-up. Follow-up is critical also. Right. He's great in follow-up.
The running thread is just preparation. Through all of this, it's preparation. And that's what sets you apart in the interviews. That's what sets you apart in the coffee chats. And that's what will set you apart once you're even on the desk.
Yeah. I mean, you have to perform ultimately.
Is there anything that you think that's the more technical side, but you mentioned AI before, as things get more, the technical things can be taken out of your hands. The personable side, is there anything aside for authenticity that you would advise someone when selling themselves on the more personal side to someone?
Every environment is different. A trading floor is very different than I do corporate finance. I'm true to who I am, right? And not authenticity. I would just suggest authenticity. And if that is not resonating in that particular environment, then find a new department or find a new job. That's not working for you.
Right.
And ultimately culminating in you starting Gabriel Advisors.
So how'd you get there?
Yeah.
So Gabriel Advisors, so I was a little bit tongue-in-cheek beforehand, that I did start it 20 years ago when I was coming out of, because we skipped a little bit. So I did Lazard, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, and then I went into private equity. I went to a shop called ZelnickMedia. I did a SPAC with some old clients of mine. That's one of them, Howie Balter from YU grad. We did a SPAC together. Also passed away a couple of years ago. But did a bunch of investing in companies through the years, been on 6 company boards, public and private companies, and then it came back to banking. People I used to work with at Credit Suisse, people I almost joined at Bear Stearns at a firm called Bank Street. I was there for about 10 years. One of the criticisms that I would have of myself, if people want to do corporate finance, this is an observation. Again, be true to yourself, and I was true to myself. But some of the people who have the best careers in corporate finance, if you're doing M&A, capital raise, you stick in a lane and you just rinse, repeat. So let's say you're a fiber guy in telecom. Just be in fiber. You're a data center guy. Just do data centers. Just do it again and again and again, next transaction. I actually love the industry. So I did data centers, and I did wireless, and I did fiber. And I did IoT, and I did a whole range of things. And candidly, I did some consulting work, and I joined boards of companies. Bankers do not join boards of companies. I did it because I love the industry. To the point of that you started with, intellectually curious, I like it. So Gabriel Advisors is a very different type of consulting firm that I decided at this point in my career, I wanted to go ahead and not just do transactions again, which is, again, what bankers do, and they do well when you're in that zone. This was a chance to do more consulting and advisory work, almost board work, with a range of companies. So I've brought on about 45 CEOs, CFOs, COOs, general counsels, CTOs of some of the top telecom companies in the United States. And it's a hall of fame, essentially, of people I've had the fortune of working with through the years, some of whom are retired, some who are still working, are CEOs in their current jobs. And it's just a chance to take the independent board model, director, and put it on steroids. It's a different type of consulting from the McKinseys and the Altman Salons and the BCGs, who very much have a pyramid structure. It's a very smart structure because you arbitrage the junior people. You pay them $250 an hour and you charge them out at $1,500 an hour, whatever it happens to be. But it's at the risk of AI, terribly. The Gabriel Advisors model is an inverse pyramid. Tremendous senior talent, real lived experience in running companies, and AI is going to do a lot of things, but context matters so much. And we're going to give people who want to buy or build a data center real lived experience from people who have built scaled, raised money, sold data centers, or fiber companies, or IoT companies, whatever it happens to be. So we have over $600 billion worth of completed transactions on our team. The team has been on 65 boards, public and private company boards. It is a remarkable team that I hope to do this for the next 15 years, working with companies with such great talent and in an industry that I really enjoy.
Right, so there's so much there. And from previous guests we've had, they've talked about how important recruiting is as one of the core functions of a CEO. So how were you able to bring on all that talent and convince them to work for you?
So the reality is there's so much, everything you get a 1 second or a 2-minute version, but there's a lot behind it. So I originally was starting this firm to be a 3-person firm. I was going to work with rural America, helping them develop broadband. That was my dream. Some Jewish banker from New York was going to go out around America and help them with their broadband. When I was speaking to a bunch of people about what my intention was, I spoke to one person in particular, Steve McGaw, who ran AT&T's M&A and supply chain for many years. I've known him for over 25 years. And he said to me, Lawrence, this is amazing. He said, everybody needs what you're trying to provide. Why are you just doing this for rural America? This wireless needs this, data center needs this, everybody needs this. And he said, I'm in. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, okay, I have to invest in a logo, got to invest in a website. And all of a sudden it became, well, not that it wasn't going to be official, but it just became much bigger than I initially intended. And like with anything in life, good begets good, bad can beget bad. So I was very fortunate to have people like Steve McGaw, Jay Jubis, a YU alum, pretty sure, who headed McKinsey's telecom practice for decades, and Ken Posey, who ran M&A for IBM. So the 4 of us are the project managers, and then we have a who's who. And good begets good. You know, I post on LinkedIn, and I say, Jimmy Eisenstein joined Gabriel Advisors, and then Jim Hyde, who's the CEO of Halo Networks. These names don't mean anything to you. He goes ahead and said, what's Jimmy doing with you? And I tell him what Jimmy's doing. He said, I want in too. So good begets good. There probably are 15 people who I've spoken to who are not on the platform. I don't want to just become a white pages, so I'm trying to create a particular dynamic. But recruiting is very important, no question. And I've been very lucky.
And yeah,
You could take it.
and so when you're getting a lot of these people who are joining the Gabriel Advisors, they still have their full-time job, right? They're still staying on in their positions. So,
It's a mix.
okay.
So Steve McGaw retired 3 years ago from AT&T. He has some work that he does consulting with a private equity firm. But, you know, he's spending time. And Jim Hyde, I mentioned, is still CEO of Halo. So he's got very much of a full-time job.
Okay.
But I would say what's common for a lot of the people is that they're at a point in their career that they very much want to think about advising the next generation, taking board roles. This is a very natural place to go ahead and lead somebody to start getting board roles. It's essentially, as I called it, it's a board role on steroids, working with companies, working with investors to do value creation for their portfolio, to help them due diligence new portfolio companies.
Got it. And how many companies right now are you advising, do you think?
We have the pipeline since November, since we launched in November, we've had about 70 engagements that have come through. Probably 25 of them are not going to develop into anything. There are 45 different companies we're at different stages of talking to. I don't know if 10 of them end up turning, 8 of them end up turning into meaningful engagements. You just don't know. It's a cycle.
Can I ask about the future of data centers? Because I saw Elon Musk says that they can go in space.
Yes,
Do you have a opinion on that? If that's actually something that can be actionable, if anyone can do it, I would say it'd be Elon Musk. What's your opinion on that?
There are reasons to think that it is possible. And I think he's talking about a 4-kilometer square field of solar panels to go ahead and power this. If you think about distance, so the distance from here to Boston is how many miles? And neither of you from Boston.
3 something? Oh, from here? Oh, no, I'm thinking from home. I don't know.
Whatever it is, it's a couple of hundred miles. How far do you think in space that will be?
Couple thousand?
1,000 miles? No, it'll be less. So there's logic in terms of data centers require cooling, they require land. Space, the land is free. It's obviously cool in space. You just have to make sure it's working and not a problem. I think that they will exist at some point. I don't know that that point is in 2028, but I think people will try certain size data centers for certain purposes. And the reality is that what is a data center? You know, right now we're thinking of, excuse me, I have a cold. We're thinking of data centers as something huge that services lots of different things. One could argue that some degree some cars, you know, these Waymo cars are little data centers, how much compute, how much analysis is being done in some of these cars. So can you have, you know, mini data centers in space? Absolutely. I don't know if we're going to have these gigantic 300 megawatt plus facilities in space that he's envisioning in the near future anyway.
Yeah, when I picture it, I think of like literally lifting the data center and just putting it in space, but that's obviously not what he envisioned.
I think it takes a little more advanced work than that.
It's about modular. So the concept of modular for energy and modular for a space station, that is very real. So it's not that complicated if you have these pre-modulars that you can go ahead and manufacture relatively cheaply, lift in a bay, lift in a rocket ship, and just assembly and maintenance that you have to worry about in space. It's completely doable. But does that mean that it's practical and a good idea? I mean, you can shoot a Tesla into space too. Is that such a good idea?
Yeah.
He will.
I just watched Project Hail Mary, which is this new movie that came out about space exploration. So from that movie, it seems like anything really is possible up there. So I don't want to put any dampers in any of his plans.
So where do you hope Gabriel Advisors go from here? And you mentioned you relaunched in November. So what was behind that?
Yeah, it's what I want to do with this next 15 years of my career. I started Gabriel Advisors when I left banking, and I started doing investing. So non-board roles and different things that's why I created Gabriel Advisors 21 years ago. But it was just me. So I joined the board of a system integrator. I did it as Gabriel Advisors. I was on the board of a wireless company, did in Gabriel Advisors. Invested in a telematics software company. I did it through Gabriel Advisors. It was just an entity I created years ago. And I just retooled it. Just already had this entity. I was already paying taxes on it. And I chose the name Gabriel because Gabriel is the archangel of truth, clarity of communications, integrity. And that's all that we're selling. Investment bankers sell M&A. Or debt or capital product, right? That's how they get paid at the end of the day. Consultants normally sell these books, these fancy, beautiful presentations. We are only selling our lived experience, our advice, without any, you can like it or not like it, but you're getting hundreds of years of experience. So that's why I chose Gabriel, and that seemed to be a good use of that entity I've had around for 20 years.
Okay. And touching right on those points of truth and integrity, I know we've talked off air about you giving back to the community and all that you do we already talked about students, but in other capacities. What responsibility do you think Jewish professionals have, and how do you view that responsibility for yourself?
So everybody has their own skills, interests, passions, so there's no one size. Be authentic to who you are. To take a step back from my journey, I told you I did 2 years, a couple of years at YU, and then a couple of years at Columbia. My years at Columbia were much better than my years at YU. I enjoyed Columbia. I didn't particularly love my years at YU. So it's like, so why are you giving back to YU? Columbia doesn't need me, right? Columbia has enough people who are spending time and money there. YU, when I came out of school in 1987, There was nobody in finance. To go to Lazard, no one at the firm at the school ever heard of Lazard. Though you think career placement has its issues today, you can't imagine once upon a time. So it's like me and Lance Hurt and Donnie Posner. There were just a handful of people who were in finance in any capacity. When Lance and Donnie, they had gotten involved in YU before I did. This was their pushing, urging me to get involved. I said, yeah, you're involved in REITs. I'll do Yeshiva College or Sims. I ended up doing both. I'll go ahead and I'll get involved. The boards over here, the lower boards, the board of overseers of each of the schools, are basically cheerleading boards. Not that there's anything wrong with cheerleading, but it's not my DNA, to be authentic. I'm not here to go ahead and say, YU's the best. Go ahead, send your kids to YU. Not that I don't say it, but that's not what I'm about. I'm a very engaged and involved person. So after probably the third or fourth board meeting where I kept my mouth shut, and then at some point I just said, there's nothing for me to do over here. Cash a check, leave me alone. I'm going back. And they said, no, we want you to do something. Donnie had been running the YU Wall Street Group, and he did it for 2 years, and I thought it needed tremendous reimagining of what we did. We did an event with Bill Ackman at Credit Suisse. Let's go with 2007, plus minus. And the event was, I'll say, a busha. Now, it's Bill Ackman. It's amazing. But it's Bill Ackman. It should have been a rock star event. We had people signing in on paper. We didn't know anybody's phone number or email. There was no YU stuff over there. No one from Credit Suisse was there. It felt like we were just squatting space. I was very disappointed. And Donnie said, I've done it for 2 years. You do it for 2 years? I said, yes, I'll do it for 2 years. I did it for 18. I have to have a woman join me because I want more women involved in this. So Evelyn Havasi joined me. And we put together 50 events over the next 18 years, and the YU alumni that you know today is essentially a byproduct of thousands of people coming to these events. We had remarkable people and the events were just completely done in a very different way. And people loved them, and they kept coming and coming. And it was great. We launched a YU real estate group, then we launched a YU technology group. My thought being that this is my pitch to the board, the big board at YU. When the market imploded in 2008, people were losing their jobs. And I said, now's the time that we actually have to invest. We are not at YU, the University of Michigan. University of Michigan, people, they bleed blue.
Yeah.
They're passionate, and we're not an Ivy. So you'll have Goldman Sachs coming to the Ivy Leagues to recruit. And they'll go to a Michigan or a UT Austin to recruit because they're big schools. We're too small. We're simply too small and not an Ivy. So we need people pulling people through. 40 years ago, there was no one in finance. Now we have people in finance, and we're going to get more people in finance, and we're going to make them care about YU. Once upon a time, no one gave a hoot about YU. You thought about YU 20 years later when you're having a kid, you're thinking about sending your kids to YU. Let's not have that gap. Let's invest in the YU alumni. Let's come up with these events for them to constantly come back and have networking when you're not looking for a job. Just come to a YU event because it's fun, because you had a chance to hear from Paul Singer or Liam Black or whoever it is that you happen to had a chance to hear from. And it worked out really well. So it worked for me because it was a chance for me to, first of all, YU was very generous, that it basically gave me free hand to go ahead and run these events because they worked and they were successful. And by the way, they were not successful for the first 3 or 4 years. So you do have to, I'll just tell people who get involved in stuff, we end up with a wonderful, successful alumni involved community, but the first 3 years were very hard. We couldn't get anybody to show up. I joined the most expensive LinkedIn package you possibly could, and I just kept inviting and pitching. I spent thousands of hours to go ahead and build a community. I was not going to wait for YU to go ahead and do it because you just can't wait. And that's my personality. And but I can't say that's going to be for somebody else who wants to spend thousands of hours building a community for YU. find what you want to do and how you can give back. This was something that spoke to me.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Well, I wanted to just say thank you because I've benefited from a lot of the YU events where they bring alumni. Just this past week, they did the Dream Dinner, which is a new initiative.
Yes.
Which was really amazing to meet
I
a
got
bunch
my
of people.
daughter to come.
Yeah, it was really amazing and a great event that they put on. So I just want to wish a thank you, and I'm sure a bunch of our listeners too from the YU community also owe a big debt of gratitude to you. So thank you so much.
And continue to think about what you can do. I say this, by the way, about Hasbara also, about anti-Semitism, Israel advocacy, whatever it happens to be. You don't know who you're next to. You don't know who you're standing next to. Little efforts go a long way. And you don't have to go ahead and solve everything, right? But if you can go ahead and do a little bit, this is maybe one more piece of advice I'll give to people. It's advice that my kids have heard me say their entire lives. Improve your probability for success. None of us have a guarantee of what's going to happen. But I'd rather have a 1 in 10 chance than a 1 in 1,000 chance. And if I do X, Y, and Z, I probably reduce my odds from 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 10. So when I speak to some students who are just sitting there and they're sending out 10,000 emails, cold calls, and stuff like that, I said, what are you doing? I said, that's a 1 in 100,000. You're going to be an old man by the time, or you'll be very lucky. I said, why don't we go ahead and think about what you want to do? Let's be thoughtful. Improve your chance of being successful. Doesn't mean that it's going to work, but I'd rather play the odds. So I also urge that. And when you're doing things in any matter, also for charity, go ahead and how you want to get involved. Try to come up with something that'll be, if you like it, the probability that you're going to do it and enjoy doing it and stick with it will be much higher, and you'll probably be more successful at it.
That's amazing. That's really great. We like to ask this question towards the end of our episodes to all our guests across different industries.
So I'm not special.
But what is one thing from the finance industry that you think pertains to all the other industries that is a skill, an experience that you've had that you think is applicable to doctors, lawyers, everyone across the spectrum?
Again, I don't want to speak outside of my comfort zone. I don't know what it takes to be a good doctor or an actuary. I have an idea, but the reason I chose to not work for International Paper, where I had a job offer also, but to work for Lazard, was I thought 2 years of investment banking would give me a lot of skills for later in life. And I still believe that when I speak to some young people who are working in finance who hate it. There are a number of people who really hate their jobs. I try to encourage them to get certain skills out of it, at least for a year or two. I don't know if other careers have that there's just something about discipline, modeling, finance, research, follow-up, checking your work. There are a lot of things that you get that I think are important skills for anything. But again, I don't know if that translates to other areas. But I do think you get it in finance.
Right.
It's incredible.
Right.
And do you have any final takeaways, Lawrence, as a Jewish professional in the workplace for our audience?
Many years ago, I made a video about, it wasn't for being Jewish in the workforce. I think it got used that way for some classes. By Joel Strauss. If any of you have had Joel, Joel's an amazing person who's has spent so much time with students through the years. So this video was essentially a comedy, a little bit of a farce, about notifying your boss that you're about to take off 3 days for the holidays. And you're bringing it up on them at the last second and stuff like that. It was meant to be a farce, but there was a lot of truth to it. And Joel ended up using it for classes about being Jewish in the workforce. About don't do this. Again, be a mensch. I don't think I'm any different at work than I am at home. So I think if you're just authentic, I think we've used that word a bunch of times, it doesn't really matter, whether you think of yourself as Jewish or not Jewish. There probably were 1 or 2 times where there was, our client was definitely anti-Semitic. And people were kicking each other under the table, saying, stop saying that, stop saying that. There was, should I have said something? Should I have just, there are different ways that you think about how do you handle things at different points in life. But those are one-offs. It's not the consistent. I would say the day in, day out is do good work. Be a good person, do good work. There are lots of ways of living your life, lots of ways of having a career. Treat it with respect and the people around you with respect.
Lawrence, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you again for all you do for the students and for young Jewish professionals across America.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for doing these podcasts. I think sounds like they're going to be very informative for students.
There we go. The first, I guess, 25, and maybe hopefully the next 25. Thanks again to our producers. Thank you to Josh. Thank you to JB. And thank you, of course, to Ashley and to Charles. And thank you to our listeners. You guys are the ones who drive this podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.